Welcome to Book Nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. Human beings like to imagine themselves as rational creatures, calmly weighing options, calculating costs and benefits, and then choosing the best path forward. The classic economic model rests on this assumption that people are fundamentally logical decision makers who pursue their best interest with clear minds. Dan Ariely, a behavioral economist who has spent years running experiments to test how people actually behave, makes the case in Predictably Irrational that this assumption is deeply flawed. We are not purely rational, and more importantly, our irrational behaviors are not random quirks or occasional mistakes. They are systematic, patterned, and, ironically, predictable. Once we recognize the invisible forces that tug at our decisions, we can begin to see ourselves more clearly and perhaps learn how to sidestep the traps that so often lead us astray. Ariely begins with the concept of relativity. We don't evaluate things in isolation but in comparison. When we consider buying a house, we don't weigh its qualities on their own, we place it against similar houses. If we are given 3 subscription options for a magazine, an online version for $59, a print version for $125, or both together for $125, most people, when faced with these choices, pick the combined option. The presence of the print-only option, which no one actually wants, makes the combined deal seem irresistible. This is the decoy effect at work. Our minds latch onto relative differences, not absolute values, and we are nudged toward options that marketers and organizations design with clever comparisons in mind. In restaurants, a particularly overpriced wine on the menu is rarely meant to sell. It exists to make the slightly less expensive option appear more reasonable, guiding customers to a predictable middle choice. This sense of relativity infiltrates many aspects of life, from salaries to romantic attraction. We might feel content with our paycheck until we learn what a coworker earns, at which point dissatisfaction arises not from our absolute income but from the comparison. Likewise, someone might not be drawn to a potential partner until another suitor appears who makes the first look better by contrast. This dynamic continues with the idea of the power of free. Rationally, the difference between something costing 1 cent and being free is tiny. But emotionally, the difference feels enormous. In one experiment, people were given the chance to choose between a luxury truffle for 15 cents and a Hershey's Kiss for 1 cent. Many chose the truffle, seeing it as a bargain. But when the prices were shifted so the truffle was 14 cents and the Kiss was free, most people chose the Kiss. The relative price difference was identical, but the psychological power of zero triggered excitement, reducing hesitation and increasing the pull of the option. Free removes risk in our minds even when the risk is minimal. This can explain why people crowd around free giveaways, even if the item is of little value, or why buy one get one free promotions generate more enthusiasm than buy 2 for half off, despite being mathematically equivalent. The allure of zero is so strong that it can distort priorities and lead us to make choices that don't align with our best interests. Ariely also dives into the problem of self-control and procrastination. People often plan to eat healthier, exercise, or complete work on time, but then fail to follow through. The culprit is our struggle between long-term goals and immediate gratification. Students in his classes were once given the choice between having fixed deadlines for papers or setting their own. Surprisingly, those who opted for evenly spaced deadlines performed better than those who could wait until the end. Self-imposed structure, even when it introduces penalties, helps people override their tendency to procrastinate. This sheds light on why people sign up for gym memberships they don't use, or why they fall into cycles of binging and guilt. We overestimate our ability to control future behavior and underestimate the pull of immediate rewards. One way to combat this is by setting up commitment devices, such as pre-committing to deadlines, scheduling automatic savings, or even freezing credit cards and blocks of ice to make impulsive spending harder. These external constraints reduce freedom in the short term but protect long-term goals. Closely related is the way arousal changes decision-making. Ariely ran experiments where young men were asked about their willingness to engage in certain risky or inappropriate sexual behaviors. When they were in a calm state, their answers leaned conservative. But when asked the same questions in a state of sexual arousal, their willingness to take risks, ignore protection, or even cross ethical lines increased dramatically. The gap between what we predict we'll do and what we actually do in the heat of the moment is vast. We tend to believe that our rational self can manage temptation, but when passion, anger, or excitement floods our system, we become different decision makers. This explains why people make choices they later regret, from infidelity to reckless driving to overspending. To protect ourselves, we need systems in place that account for how irrational we can become when emotions flare. Simply trusting our calm, rational selves is not enough. Ariely also examines how expectations shape our experiences. If people are told that a beer contains balsamic vinegar, their enjoyment decreases compared to when they taste the same beer without knowing the ingredient. Similarly, if patients are told a medication is expensive, they often feel greater relief from their symptoms than when told it is cheap, even if the pill itself is identical. Price, labels, and prior knowledge filter perception. This placebo effect extends beyond medicine to food, wine, and even performance. In blind taste tests, people often cannot distinguish between expensive wine and cheap wine, but once told the price, their brains literally register greater pleasure from the pricier bottle. Expectations prime us to experience what we anticipate, often more than what is objectively there. This means our realities are, in part, constructed by beliefs, packaging, and stories surrounding a product or experience. Honesty and dishonesty provide another lens into predictable irrationality. Most people like to think of themselves as honest, but experiments reveal how easily we bend the truth when incentives appear and when we believe we can cheat just a little. In one study, participants solving math problems could self-report their scores for payment. Many inflated their results, but only modestly. Rarely did anyone claim a perfect score. People want the benefit of cheating, but also want to maintain a self-image of honesty. When cues about morality are made salient, such as asking participants to recall the 10 Commandments before the task, cheating drops significantly, even among those who cannot remember all 10. The reminder of moral codes reinforces honesty. This suggests dishonesty is not simply about weighing risks of being caught but about negotiating with our self-concept. We rationalize small transgressions, telling ourselves they don't count, but we are influenced by subtle reminders of ethics around us. Corporate scandals, tax evasion, or even minor office theft can often be traced to environments where dishonesty is normalized and self-justification is easy. The power of social norms versus market norms further illuminates how context shapes behavior. In social exchanges, people act generously, helping friends move or offering a meal without expecting precise repayment. But in market exchanges, every transaction is tied to value, price, and fairness. When the two spheres collide, problems emerge. If a company asks employees to stay late by appealing to loyalty, people may comply. But if the company then offers a trivial payment, say a few dollars, it shifts the request from social norms into market norms, where the small payment feels insulting. Similarly, offering a friend money for a holiday meal can feel offensive, because it reduces a social gesture to a financial transaction. Ariely illustrates this with experiments where people are more willing to do small tasks for free than for a small amount of money. Working for free feels like a social favor, while working for a pittance feels undervalued in market terms. Organizations must understand this divide carefully. Mixing the two norms can backfire, eroding goodwill and reducing motivation. Another insight arises in the concept of keeping doors open. People hate to lose options even when those options are irrelevant or costly. In one experiment, participants played a computer game where they could click on doors to earn money. They learned that keeping doors open, even when unprofitable, felt more appealing than focusing on the most lucrative door. The fear of losing an option drove behavior more than maximizing reward. In life, this manifests as clinging to relationships, commitments, or opportunities that no longer serve us, simply because we don't want to close them. People may hold on to subscriptions they don't use, keep clothes they'll never wear, or pursue careers that no longer fulfill them, all to avoid the finality of shutting a door. Recognizing this tendency can help us focus on what truly matters and let go of distractions that drain time and energy. The book also discusses how ownership inflates value, a bias known as the endowment effect. When people own something, they immediately value it more than if they did not own it. In one famous experiment, students randomly given a coffee mug were later asked how much they would sell it for. Their prices were much higher than what other students were willing to pay. Simply possessing the mug increased its perceived worth. This plays out in housing markets, where sellers often overprice their homes because they see them through the lens of memories and attachments, while buyers view them objectively. It also appears in ticket scalping, collectibles, and even workplace negotiations. Once we feel something is ours, we resist parting with it, often irrationally. The same effect explains why trial periods, free samples, and test drives work so well. Once people feel temporary ownership, they struggle to give it back. Ariely explores how emotions like price anchors affect us in unexpected ways. If asked whether we would pay the last 2 digits of our social security number for a bottle of wine, people with higher numbers tend to bid significantly more. Arbitrary anchors, once introduced, influence subsequent decisions. Stores use this by showing inflated original prices next to discounted tags, making the sale look irresistible. Real estate agents show clients overpriced houses first, setting a reference point that makes other houses look like bargains. Anchoring biases us heavily, often without our awareness, and can shape not just purchases but perceptions of fairness, value, and even worth of human life in policy debates. Throughout the book, Ariely emphasizes that these irrational behaviors are not one-off accidents. They repeat predictably across populations, cultures, and contexts. Understanding them is not just about intellectual curiosity but about practical implications. Marketers, employers, policymakers, and individuals all benefit from recognizing how humans really operate rather than how classical economics assumes they should. For example, policies designed to encourage savings may fail if they rely solely on rational appeals, but succeed if they exploit inertia, such as automatically enrolling employees in retirement plans unless they opt out. Similarly, efforts to reduce dishonesty might focus less on punishment and more on reminders of ethical codes or transparency mechanisms that align with people's desire to see themselves as moral. The narrative is also personal. Ariely often references his own background, including surviving severe burns as a young man, which led him to become fascinated with pain, perception, and decision-making. His curiosity drives his experiments, often playful in design but revealing deep truths. Whether studying pricing quirks in restaurants, procrastination among students, or dishonesty in ordinary people, he brings a blend of scientific rigor and storytelling that highlights how surprising human behavior can be. Readers are often struck by how much these patterns mirror their own lives, seeing themselves in the irrational choices described. What emerges from the book is a portrait of human beings as creatures caught between logic and emotion, influenced by hidden forces we rarely notice. We compare ourselves endlessly, we fall for the seduction of free, we struggle with self-control, we let ownership cloud our judgment, and we cling to options we should abandon. We are dishonest, but usually only in small doses that allow us to preserve self-respect. We are swayed by expectations, labels, and arbitrary anchors far more than we realize. And yet, by understanding these tendencies, we gain tools to design better choices for ourselves. Setting up pre-commitments, being wary of comparisons, questioning the lure of free, and learning to close doors can all help us make wiser decisions. Ariely does not paint irrationality as purely negative. These quirks can add richness to life, fueling generosity under social norms, enhancing enjoyment when expectations are positive, and reminding us that human behavior is complex. The problem arises when we deny these patterns and assume we are purely rational. By admitting our predictable irrationality, we can adjust environments, policies, and personal strategies to work with rather than against our human nature. In this sense, behavioral economics is less about condemning irrationality and more about harnessing it. The lessons stretch from personal finance to public policy. For individuals, recognizing the endowment effect may help in selling possessions, while understanding procrastination can lead to setting smarter deadlines. For companies, balancing social and market norms can preserve employee motivation, while transparency about pricing can build trust. For governments, structuring programs with default options and awareness of human biases can dramatically improve outcomes in health, savings, and compliance. The key is to accept that irrationality is the rule, not the exception. In the end, Predictably Irrational leaves readers with a humbling realization: the hidden forces shaping our decisions are powerful and consistent. We may believe we are captains of our fate, but in truth, subtle nudges, comparisons, and biases steer us more than we'd like to admit. Yet this knowledge is not cause for despair, it is an opportunity. Once we see the patterns, we can anticipate them, design around them, and perhaps even outwit them. By shedding the illusion of pure rationality, we open the door to a more honest, compassionate, and effective understanding of human behavior. And that's it. Predictably Irrational by Dr. Dan Ariely. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.